Got it.
Okay, so is it going? It's going.
Yep.
Okay, okay. So just a second, let my spinning wheel of death stop. I'm gonna, because the wheel's froze. There we go. It's almost, okay, there it goes. So Will, I'm gonna stop my video. I want everybody to know this is Will Major, and Will teaches photography in Kentucky, Southeastern Kentucky College. Did I get that close?
Southeast Kentucky Community and Technical College.
Okay,
yeah.
almost, yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's a long acronym. It's okay.
okay. So and then also he partners with Higher Ground, which partners in the college. It's an interesting arrangement, and it's super successful. So I really think it's important what he has to say. And the other thing is that Will has a job in the community as a community liaison, basically, right? Creating community events and all that stuff.
Yep.
So, and that's in Harlan, Kentucky, and that is a very, very amazing place. And I'm still getting the benefits of it because the medicine man sending me herbs still, So I mean, yeah, my life is all good with that. So anyway, so Will has his MFA, and he got that in Georgia. Is that correct?
University of Georgia in 2019. Yep.
Okay. Yep. All right. And so, Will, welcome to my class. I'm going to take off my video. Feel free to just take off. We'll all be listening. And while you're talking, I may close a program or two to see if I can make sure this computer doesn't freeze up. But okay. You won't see me do that. So okay. So and I mean, does that so autistic of me or what? Just to tell you everything. Oh, and by the way, I have all this stuff in the room. No.
Right.
I'm kidding. So okay, I'll see you. Will go ahead and start sharing, and I'm going to go ahead and turn off. And Eric, I think you're going to be in for a real treat.
Oh, you have to, Jane, you have to, I hit the share button and you have to let me do it. I'm not sure.
Okay. Oh, okay. Multiple. There it goes. Sorry. There we go. Now you should be good.
Yep. There we go.
Okay. All righty.
Let me get my desktop up. We're on here. Haven't done this in a while.
Yeah, I see it. I see the PowerPoint. So
yeah. Let me go to view slideshow. Okay, there we go. Okay. And that's not even the right.
It is such a great experience. Boy, was it.
Okay. So thank you, Jane. I'm very excited to be here. Again, my name is Will Major. I live in Harlan, Kentucky, which is the southeastmost county in the state, and it's in the heart of Appalachia. And if you're not familiar with either of those things, I'm going to go over that in a moment. I'm originally from East Tennessee, Johnson City, Tennessee, specifically, kind of in between both Knoxville and Asheville, North Carolina, if you're familiar with that area, part of the world. And I'm going to be sharing this project that I did with it's a multiple group project, a lot of people. It was interesting. It was at the Harlan County Detention Center. So yeah, let's get into it. What was it? It was an 18-week program to teach inmates at this facility humanities and arts-based courses, and they got community college credit for that. We only taught for 12 weeks. I would say 2 weeks before we went into jail, we were petitioning the jailer to let us have extra kind of let us bring cameras in, let us bring computers in, like petitioning him to let us have basically special accommodations with these inmates and future students. And then we had another 2 weeks after classes ended where we all went in and we did these massive interviews with each of the students. We taught a total of 20 over the summer. We want to make this ongoing. That's due to also funding and getting funding. It's been a massive undertaking and a lot of wheels. This was a project that was funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation and the Chorus Foundation. Mellon basically was giving out grants to community colleges and rural areas to teach in underprivileged scenarios. So folks that are incarcerated, folks that are in rehabilitation, folks that are on parole, signing them up to get credit for school. And that's what we did, is that they got each person that signed up with us got 12 credit hours worth of community college, and that can be put into getting a degree or signing up for a certificate program once they have gotten out of the prison system. So this was again with Southeast Kentucky Community and Technical College, which is part of a system of statewide Kentucky community colleges, and was also led by this group called Higher Ground in Harlan. Higher Ground is a community arts initiative that has been around for 20 years in this region. And my wife has recently, Kate Hanslick, who taught the theater class for this project, she has recently become one of the creative directors for Higher Ground. Higher Ground historically has done plays and other kind of creative placemaking projects. They did a photography project where they had all of a bunch of community members in the county take photographs and basically tell their story, their visual history of what Harlan County means to them. And they also did kind of a mural project where they would get community members and also kind of famous artists from internationally to come to Harlan and to create these beautiful murals around the county about certain subjects, about like what does it mean to be from home, what is the history of this place, as well as kind of like maybe some like natural wonders. We had a mural of a hellbender, which is a type of why am I losing? So, hellbender is a type of lizard, a salamander. There it is. Salamander that is endangered in this region, and we wanted to celebrate and also kind of show that like we need to take care of our land and be ecological and environmentally aware. And then we also have one of a possum, a downtown that is extremely cute and also has like poke and goldenrod next to it. So regionalism stuff, but the Higher Ground's biggest thing is a theater project. And for the last 20 years, they have collected oral histories from the county and the surrounding region, and have taken those, basically the hopes, dreams, concerns of the people, and have turned those conversations into theater projects. So, and also really centering on kind of themes that are really hard to talk about. So the first play was about the opioid crisis in Appalachia, and the first play was called Higher Ground because they likened the 1977 flood that devastated Harlan, Kentucky, to the same thing that happened in the late 90s and 2000s with Oxycontins and other opioids being flooded into the region and hurting so many people. And they've done plays about kind of what does it mean to be a community member, needle exchanges, Black Lives Matter, like incredible, like just topics. Food deserts and food insecurities is another one that they've done 9 projects so far as a theater, and they've toured nationally with these projects, and I'm lucky enough to kind of be a part of that in some way. So yeah, that's kind of just the background of this whole project and why we wanted to. Historically, Higher Ground has worked with marginalized folks and doing tough work, and this is just another thing that is adding to their portfolio of we're starting to work with inmates and people that are incarcerated. So we offered 4 classes in the humanities and the arts, and those being Intro to College, Appalachian Studies, basically the history of our region, photography, which is what I taught, and theater. And we're trying to keep funding going with this so that we can keep going in and offering even if it's not for college credit, at least we can still keep going in and doing programming, because these folks need everything that they can possibly get, because they're just sitting and they're doing nothing most of the time. So yeah, that's background. So where's Harlan? Like I said, it's in the southeast corner of Kentucky. Historically, it's a coal mining community. It's an energy extraction community. Coal here has declined since the 2000s, and with that has also gone the population. The population has kind of moved with the industry, but a lot of people, due to poverty and generationally not being able to, afford equity to leave the area, that's kind of the remnants of who's still here. Also, other industries have not really come in here at a rapid rate due to the land being owned for mineral rights and by outside corporations. Over 90% of the land in the county is owned by somebody else. So that's hard for anybody to, get a house or to come in with a business, or it's land use here is strictly kind of funneled in just to energy resources and stuff like that. So I would also say that since the decline in coal, and I was kind of talking about this with Higher Ground a little bit, since the decline in coal and industry in this area, there's been an influx in drug use, partly to blame on the opioid epidemic. Almost all of the inmates that we worked with this summer they're all nonviolent offenders, but almost all of them were in there for drug use. And the majority of the men were in there because they had gotten hurt on the job, or former coal miners that got hurt in the late 90s and early 2000s, and then they were prescribed Oxycontins for the pain, and it made them drug addicts essentially. So it's like a wave that's come into this area, and it's hard because it's with the rise in the opioid abuse, there is now also a new industry in Appalachia, which is basically the prison industrial complex. There's this idea that we have all of these mountaintop removal sites. So once you've taken all the coal, what do you put on there next? It's a prison. So we're becoming like the whole region as a whole is becoming like that's going to be the next big kind of economic revenue, is basically bringing in federal inmates and housing them here, because we're seen as a sacrifice zone in a lot of ways. So yeah. But Harlan is located in central Appalachia, and is extremely remote. It's like 2 hours from anywhere. But the good things about Harlan, absolutely gorgeous here. We are surrounded by mountains. We're surrounded by natural resources. We're surrounded by streams, and the people and the culture are incredible here. So like, we have bad things and we have good things, just like any other place. And if you're not familiar with what Appalachia is, this is just an overview of that. It's a region that stretches from northern Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, up to southern New York. Even though we're rich in natural resources, it has often been associated with poverty. And that's due to a lot of the generations that were here at one point being paid in scrip, which was fake currency. So most people would come here to live in the coal camps in the 20s, 30s, 40s. And they would move up from the South, come here, and they would be paid in company money. So their house would be company owned. The money that they would get would only be redeemable at the company store. So they were never actually making anything. It was just being constantly generated back into the industry. So if you have multiple generations with, not getting real lifetime currency, then a lot of equity isn't built up. And when people finally started unionizing here and finally started, asking for better wage and asking for safer conditions, then the industry kind of, moved to, instead of deep mining, to mountaintop removal, which is basically blowing up mountains, leveling them completely, and just taking the coal seams from there. So yeah, that's it's a long, convoluted thing. But where was I? Oh yeah, so stereotypes of the people as being ignorant, anti-progressive, racist, and bigots has run rampant historically in written and visual media about Appalachia. But in reality, it's a diverse and complicated landmass, just like anywhere. And that has largely, in the central area, being Eastern Kentucky, parts of West Virginia, parts of Southwest Virginia, and parts of East Tennessee, have been taken advantage by large companies and outside investment. Starting to change in a lot of places. I mean, my hometown, East Tennessee, used to be very much a railroad town. Not a lot there, but I would say it's becoming like the next Knoxville. It's becoming, which gentrification has its own set of issues too, but it's interesting to see kind of the shifts and changes that are happening here. But also culturally, this area has an amazing folk traditions, vibrant culture rooted in music, the arts, and craftsmanship. I mean, bluegrass, country, music, it started here, and in the mountains, and yeah, I mean, like it's a complicated and diverse place with lots of good, amazing things, and also a lot of sad and tragic things. And I think that's not talked enough about in the region. And I think that's also kind of the goal with some of the work we did with the prisoners as well, was that prisoners are also complicated individuals that live complicated lives, and that they're not just criminals, and that there's good and bad in everybody. So, and for them to also realize that about themselves in these courses. So the class I taught was just basic kind of digital photography course. It really focused on visual literacy and mapping images, using photography as a tool of expression, learning about the medium both technically and conceptually, seeing photography as a means of transfiguration and freedom. So the first couple of weeks I'm teaching with them, the students are like, why we don't care about photo. We're literally just coming here because we just want to get out of our pods. And I was like, that's fine. That every other student that I've ever had is the same way with their dorm. So like, why is this any different? So yeah, we had these discussions about, is photography an art form? And you don't think so, why? And we also had conversations about like, what is the role of visual representation? Why does it matter? And that's kind of what we started doing, was like this visual mapping thing. And I gave them a couple images. One was this image of Muhammad Ali, and then another one's a Joel Sternfeld image, but we'll talk about that in a second. And yeah, I'll just read, I guess this was the prompt for them. Before you begin, take a few minutes to simply look at the photograph. Imagine you are a visual explorer looking into the image to see how its deeper meaning is revealed to you specifically. No two people will see an image in the same way, so allow your imagination and personal experience to guide you in this interaction. Next, take a pen and begin to analyze the photograph by circling or marking aspects of the image, and then write a short description of why that aspect is significant to you. Look carefully at the image to identify photographic choices that create meaning for you in the image. So like looking at kind of framing and compositional elements, but also kind of like writing out like what you think the story is about as well. And this one, like someone says, my father was a huge Ali fan because he was from Kentucky. And yeah, and then kind of going into these ideas of like body language, what's the main focus, you know, on and on. So each student did something with that image, and then they also had this image by Joel Sternfeld, which I've always been drawn to this image because it's so strange. And it's, I mean, you look at it and it's a firefighter picking a pumpkin while there is a raging fire going on in the background. And all these guys, normally every student I've had in other classes are like, why is the firefighter doing this? Why? But they all said it's a mock fire. They're all training to do that because they all have done this work before at some time. So they were like, yeah, that's just a staged fire for the firefighters to like get used to how to you know, put out fires at houses and stuff. So extremely practical. And I was just like, normally we have a larger discussion about this, but you all got it. So then I was just asking them like, well, what about the image? Like, what else can we figure out about it? Like, what does it make you feel? And then like this person says it speaks to them because they always went to farmers market with their dad to get stuff. What else did they say? It looks like to me like they're not too worried about the fire, or it's a controlled burn, which is, yeah, what I was talking about. And when I was a kid, we used to raise a garden. So like they're thinking about not only like what's happening in the image, like what do you think the narrative is, but also really diving into what it means to them personally, and how images can make one feel you know, array of things if you study them. So yeah, and here's another project we did. I've been doing this project for years. I think it's a really good one. It's called Blind Drawing of a Photograph. I'll read the prompt again. In this exercise, you will break off into pairs and sit across from each other. One person will have a photograph and the other person will have a blank sheet of paper and a marker. Through very concise language, the individual with the photograph will describe what they see to their partner, and they will draw it. The person drawing is not allowed to see the image. and vice versa. You will use the following description, terms, and questions in order to map the photograph into a drawing. What is the main subject? What does the main subject look like? What objects are within the frame? How is the image composed? Where are the objects, people, and other things within the frame located? So that was just kind of the general prompt that I gave them. And then I split them off into pairs, and I would give the image, usually by some famous photographer. This happens to be a William Eggleston photograph. And then they would kind of talk about like each quadrant of the image, and basically the other person would have to draw it while the other person was describing it. So this is an image by Jacob Hopt, who's I threw this one in because of Halloween. But yeah, it was just a fun exercise. And then this one was by Ouija. And they really got into it. There was a trust kind of building exercise between the students, and then they would have to be like, what's and they're really having to like also really describe what's happening in the image, so that the final result of the drawing could be accurate in some representation. So something popped up in the chat, but I can't read it yet. I'll just keep going.
Yeah, just keep going. I'm answering it. She's just saying she's sorry she's late, and I'm telling her, don't worry, we're glad she made it.
Okay. Oh, it's Amelia. Hi,
Yeah.
Amelia. Okay. Yeah. So keep going. So the next project was had them do an oral and visual history drawing exercise, and also a writing exercise along with that. The prompt being, in this assignment, you will write 2 pages in your composition notebook about a place or person that is important to you. Think about every detail about the subject matter. It can be a bulleted list, a brainstorm bubble, a poem, or a narrative. What stories do you remember about the subject? What is the good, bad, and the ugly? Once you've written as much as you can about your subject, you will draw it to the best of your ability. Use what you have written as well as what you have learned from the image mapping assignment in order to complete your drawing. Try to be as detailed as possible in both your writing and drawing. So it was a lot of personal things that they would bring up. Some of them would write about jail. Like this person right here has their basically their day-to-day in jail, and then they drew themselves in jail. But then other people wrote about things on the outside as well. So like the other image is of this student's childhood dog, and what they remember about the dog and how they cared for it, and they were really sad when the dog died. And yeah, all of the stories had something to do with their personal lives, and this was to like help them articulate just the complicated feelings that they have about their predicament, and also to remember that there are things that are going on the outside. Folks, some of them focused on the fact that they were incarcerated, but which is also cathartic, I think, to write down that stuff. But it was also just an exercise to like get them and to help them see the stuff that's kind of possibly outside of their confines of being in a jail cell. Another thing that they did was camera operations and composing. Basically, I gave them all a point and shoot for them kind of to freely express themselves, to kind of like use body language and play with portraiture. And yeah, this was like this was a fun day for all of them because they all each got a camera. And they just had like that was like the most fun that I had seen them have in the entire time that they were in the class, because that was giving them power and autonomy over their own selves, and that they were also just like enjoying like handing it up in front of the camera and stuff. So it was just like it was super fun. But like one of the days, I guess the jailer hadn't told the COs um that they were going to have cameras in that day. And they like basically the students were like taking off their shirts and showing off their tattoos and stuff. And um the two desk COs came in and were like, what the hell are you all doing, like. I thought I was going to get thrown out of doing the program because of it. And then I was just diplomatically telling them, I was like, the jailer told me that I could have cameras. And I was like, well, they can't have their shirts off. I was like, well, I didn't know that, and played as dumb as possible. But overall, I mean, they had a ton of fun with this. And also all of the images that were made, they got copies of them. And they also had college emails, and I sent them a Dropbox with all the images. Everything that they made was theirs. So like everything that they wrote, they kept in their notebook. All the images that they took were theirs, and with the caveat that I could show this work for kind of educational purposes. So yeah, they also did collages. So giving them some of the work that they did, they would like put stuff up and they would write stories about the images. This one's of Finley. It makes me kind of tear up every time I see it sometimes. Is usually my happy moments in my photo class. I'm learning, and it's images of him. And yeah, it was super awesome for them to just, and cathartic. And this was like a studio day where we just like sat around and bitched about stuff and complained and talked smack, and while they were basically drawing and pasting images into their notebooks. Yeah, here are a couple other examples of that. They would tear them up. They would do it was incredibly fun exercise for them. And then they also, like, what was cool with a lot of these images is that they would also send these images through the mail to family members and stuff. So this was probably my favorite project, and I think this is when Jane was here as a guest artist. But we talked the week prior, I think, to Jane coming. We were talking about the mugshot, and we discussed how it's often used as propaganda to show that incarcerated people are villains. So the idea was like, we're going to create images and portraits of ourselves that show that we are individuals that are more than the crime and are multifaceted in some way. Yeah. And like I said, the photographs were given to them to use in their notebooks and to mail to their family members. So yeah, we called it the bullpen, but that was like, it's a 24-hour lockdown facility, so they're not able to physically have visitors. All the visitors that they have are through an iPad, and it costs like so much money for just to have that kind of visitation. They aren't necessarily allowed or given the right to go outside at all unless you're on a work crew. That's the only time that they're generally outside. But they're usually just locked in their cell. And this is something I didn't mention earlier that I probably should have, but like the majority of the inmates that are in this jail are state inmates and are not from Harlan originally. They're from other places around. And that's to basically fund the jail so that it can basically stay operational as a business and make a profit. So yeah, there's that kind of backstory, but we made images that like, what are your hopes? What are your dreams? How do you want people to like think that how you look? How do we like basically go against this propaganda to make you look like a villain? Like, what's the antithesis of that? And it's like a lot of them said, I want to take a picture that would make my mama proud. And I loved that, and it was cool. And I remember the one on the far right here is Kenny, and he like kept looking at the back of my camera every time I take a picture of him. He said, "No, my mom would kill me if I was slouching. I have to like sit up a little bit more." And then Smiley over here on the far left is like, I want to look like I'm like have hope and like that I can see outside of these walls, and was like literally looking up into the sky. And yeah, it was just a fun exercise. And they really enjoyed taking these images. The other thing that Jane brought to the table that was just incredible was basically cyanotyping and chlorophyll printing on leaves. Jane's a master at alternative processing. And
They were beautiful.
yeah, so like Jane came in and was like, I'm gonna make these basically cyanotyped images, and also do these cool leaf prints that we had to do on the outside because they would take multiple hours. So Jane, I mean, probably people already know this, but Jane has been working in the Southwest region of the United States with inmates for a long time, and I thought she was the perfect candidate to come up here. We ran into some technical things, well, not technical, life things.
Yeah.
My wife and my partner and another guest artist contracted COVID while we were doing this project. So Jane and I were doing everything in our power to not get it, and we didn't. So
we did. Yeah. It was great.
Yeah, and Kate and C, their symptoms weren't bad, but it's still COVID in it. So.
I literally didn't even meet Kate in her face before the day I left.
Yeah.
That was the first time we could take off the mask. It was just it was a really great experience. I'm not gonna lie. It was so good. I still have a very good feeling about it all the time. So that's of course why I wanted Will to come, but those guys were great. And that leaf print looks good, but boy, we had some trouble. I mean, that was hard, those leaf prints.
Yeah.
But still, they're beautiful. I mean, I love looking at that with him holding that. It's just such a beautiful image.
Yeah. And we did it initially on, no, you're fine. We did it initially on kudzu leaves to represent how this population is seen as invasive. But there's an abundance of incarcerated individuals that are often overlooked. So that was kind of like the conceptual framework of why we were doing that. And we were going to make one for each student, but that
the rain. Remember the big flood? Yeah.
Literally, that was another thing that happened. The 1 in 1,000 year flood that happened just north of us in Letcher Perry, Knott, and Breathitt counties devastated that area. And Harlan, I mean, we got a ton of rain here. We got spared somehow. Didn't get flooded, but yeah, the rain really did damper our ability to make a lot of these. But I'm thinking at some point that we will get to a point
because we've made some since then of the pictures, so it's still ongoing. It's going to be a really a beautiful set of images. Soon as once we get them done, I don't think we've let it go.
Yeah, no,
It's
I
just a
haven't let
matter
it
of
go. I've
time.
just
Yeah,
gotten busy. But and
they
here's
make
some
it
of the
beautiful.
cyanotypes that they made, which I don't know. Did you think of like a conceptual framework with the cyanotypes?
Well, I mean, I always have, of course, as an autism person, I like blue as a color of hope. So I'll associate a color real easy with, you know, with memory, blue with memory, hope, moving through things, water, the underneath, all that. So, I make all of my memory work in blue personally. So that's how I think about these cyanotypes. But I thought that the thing in these images that became important is that it added another layer to the idea of the project you were speaking about the propaganda piece, and sort of put another filter in, as an image could have been made outside against another wall with a cyanotype.
Yeah.
So it could have been, and the light was just so beautiful, and then that was surreal too. And the way we got that exposure, there was just so many things about that project. But we wanted to have a project that they could do to in the gel, and cyanotype was a good choice logistically, as well,
And
because
like a tactile type thing too.
so that they
Sorry.
would have it, yeah, as an object, because there's a lot of that. Well, we noticed that when we were talking just a second ago about the use of the iPad, that was also for their lessons. So they don't, and they had the notebook. So there wasn't a lot of object that they could hang on to for memory, and an object is really good for that. So these prints are, to me, conceptually another way to see their experience, and so once they pick it up, they're going to be thinking about learning and education rather than, living in that hole. So I think that's another reason to have an object. And why it was good that you printed all those other photographs, for them. They were so happy too when you pass those out to them. Like,
Well, yeah, it's just
like family, mi familia. Yeah, it was really lovely to see. And can I just throw this in, and then I'll be quiet and keep going. But one of the things when you were talking about the gel use and creating income so that it can stay open, I go back to thinking about how there were 250 people in that little building, and they never asked us who I was. They never, the whole 2 weeks that we went in there, they never once asked my name. Do you remember that? I mean, it's still the first time
well,
that's
they did
ever
the same
happened
thing
to
with
me.
me too. So it's like,
Just like unbelievable, So there's this level. It was an interesting environment because, like you were talking about the cameras and the not taking off their shirt. Okay, so there's that, and the guys, I'm sure, concerned about the security risk, but you and I could have carried in a bomb if we wanted to in that wagon, and so, I mean, I was super like intrigued by that dynamic, that was going on in there that was sort of covert. And I certainly didn't want to rock it because it made it so easy for us to go in and out, and it's just lovely, because we didn't wait long and, all that good stuff. But anyway, I was fascinated by that part of it too.
a level of not caring enough for anything, and also just like seeing these people as otherized and as not as subhuman, and also seeing us as subhuman for even to come in to actually give a shit about their well-being. So yeah.
And they weren't it's at all interested in what you were doing, which I found interesting too, because it's not the normal, thing. So anyway, but yeah, very interesting sort of, there are two little worlds happening within that dynamic of that class. The world inside the bullpen and the little room where things were going on, and then the other world outside of those two places. So, I mean, I really appreciated that. So I think those are all good reasons for the cyanotypes. that we
Yeah.
talked about, but they were beautiful, weren't they? Could you believe that exposure unit?
It
I don't
did
want to
such
get
a good job.
diverted. Oh, I've been looking for one like that online to buy for my studio.
We'll talk. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
I think that's my last slide. But I think the last thing I wanted to say was I think the point of this whole thing was kind of to break the cycle of incarceration and to basically help these students keep furthering their education. A lot of them are able to get like Pell Grants and, loans once they're going to get out. So that's going to help with life stuff. But also, if they can get a degree, that's going to help radically change kind of modify behavior and modify kind of them getting out of this horrible prison industrial complex. So that was the kind of the goal. And we went in, I think this was 2 weeks ago, and did a kind of final thing after they had done all their interviews with Kate about kind of their whole lives and why they're in jail and all that stuff. And we went in and we basically signed them up for the FAFSA again, signed them up to, a lot of them are getting out now. They're about to get on parole. So they're extremely excited. Like, we just got contacted by one of the guys that lives in Whitley County, and we've been working with him to get enrolled in classes for the winter semester and also the beginning of the spring semester. And we're still talking to the people while they're on the outside too. So it's
a great project.
Yeah.
Well,
and doing it too. So
just to add into that, one of the things, and I don't have a huge understanding of it, but I just remember us talking about it, was that the money that they get can then help them get into housing after they get out of jail, so that they can continue their education. So that's another big, this project is really, really important. And to me, another really important part of it is the idea behind it, or philosophy, you see in a nutshell, is restorative justice. And looking at, I think about the Zimbabwe tribe that whenever somebody committed a crime, then the entire tribe would gather around the person in a circle and tell them over and over again all the great things they did in their lifetime. And they would do that until the person had remorse and was willing to change. It was a very positive community healing ceremony. Nobody went to prison. So it was just real interesting. So I kind of, and just this underlying idea going on of, when I talk about restorative justice, of looking at building what you're talking about, that it's not necessarily said, but it's part of the philosophy that's ingrained in everything that was going on, which is so great, to experience that, because a lot of places don't, have that. So, and in those 2 rooms, that's where all that was happening. And then the punitive would go back, it would go back to punitive, whenever it would go. So, I was moved by so many of those stories, but I gotta tell you that audio, I hope my students, they better be listening to all that, because it is really worth listening to. Yeah,
we also really have I need to send this to you, but we have hours of interviews from all of them. If you really want to deep dive into.
Well, it's really important stuff to think about. I learned so much while I was there too about the diversity. Remember that? I just had to ask questions, and even though people had COVID, it was just like, for someone like me, it was just such a really great experience. I never had a dull moment the whole time I was there, and I really got to make some work. Huh?
I said the same for me.
Yeah, I know you did it. Yeah. Remember we got pulled over by that guy? It was a big adventure. It was
Yeah.
all a big adventure, and it was so much fun. And I think I'll be friends with you the rest of my life, Will. I swear. I said that I could only collaborate with Will. There's nobody in the other world that could tolerate me, or I wouldn't go like, you know, crazy.
I loved every second. I want to come to your neck of the woods
Yeah,
and do the same thing with
do
you.
some
So
more work. Yeah. So that's exactly right. So I need to work on that too, because I would love to get a little project going on here and that maybe we could do sometime. We'll have to think about that further as a social practice.
yeah.
So anyway, well, Eric, do you have any questions?
Yeah. Questions? Anything?
Not really.
All right. So I kind of said what I wanted to say on that part about the whole idea of restoration and you know, working through things like the whole positive kind of idea of rehabilitation. And oh man, and it really does work, because I used to take my people and sneak that in, sneak in those yeah, and it does, it's really a good thing. So anyway, that was a good talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll be sending out. I usually put these on my YouTube channel because I'm a little bit selfish, but I sent them out already to the other students in the digital photography program.
Okay.
So now I did the link. So now I'll go ahead and send the talk out too, so that they can see, because I really feel like that people need to see something besides teaching that has to do with the greater good in a photo. Photography saves lives. And that's a perfect example,
Yeah.
it did.
I think one last thing I want to say is I think art in itself needs to be seen as a way that we can collaborate and heal, and that's across all sectors, and that instead of being siloed into this kind of like you are making stuff in this out of your genius brain in a studio, that it really should be about the world and it should be collaborative. I think visual artists are usually not collaborative enough, and it should also have a just a wider, deeper thing that is helping folks.
Because
And
what's the point otherwise? I mean, come on.
it's
If
siloed.
it's not doing something, I always tell it to my students. I mean, like if it's not doing, I mean, depending on, of course, why you're making the art. There is the narcissistic art that's about journey and all that. But if you're thinking about art for the greater good, and we don't think about that enough, there's a whole lot more of the other kind of art going on, then it's got to be that way. It's got to be, what is the point of making it? There's that fine line I teach that to students all the time about, especially about actually exploitation versus making work for the greater good and creating a community and a collaboration. Like that project is clearly a collaboration with the guys, as well as all these other pieces like you talked about. So I mean, like I always say, that we can make another picture as photographers. We can. We're going to see something. We're going to make a picture of it. We both know that. We're going to be like, it's just going to come, like something's going to come. We're going to make a picture. But if you wound the individual by the picture, or don't treat it with the respect that the person deserves and should have, and worth, that the photograph isn't about worth, then it's it's forever. It never stops. Like the wound is then a wound. It's not, like, whereas if it's done the right way, as a collaboration, then it's like a joy maker. Like when I see those pictures this time, I was always thinking about, oh yeah, that's so great that went on. And then this, happened, and looking through that all again. And I hope that those guys are too, because it was such a great collaboration. And which then there was a spectacle, which was really good. It didn't have that element. When they're acting crazy and stuff, that's a spectacle, but that's on them. That's really about them doing a kind of to me, like a little communication thing, like a little group thing. It's like a thing, like someone like me would say, that's a group thing, that that they do it's a different form of communication of language that goes on in the group, and so they're horsing around and doing all that. Don't you think? I mean, of living
Yeah,
together day in and day out. So I think that might be important in part of the collaboration, if to have some of that going on in there. So that was an important piece of it, I thought, like going on. So of language, going on with those and culture and all that. So that was a great project, Will. And I mean, it was done with such beauty and love. And I just feel like it's going to really resonate for years to come. I really do.
right. We just did one part too. I mean, I think what Robert did with Appalachian Studies, and also what Megan did with Intro to College, and also Kate's theater, like they did a whole like radio drama each of the
Man,
classes.
I know. Remember the snap in? Like we were doing the
Yeah.
snap in, and oh yeah. That's what I put one of those on there. I'll put the others too, but I just didn't want them. I want to make sure they hear it. Sometimes when I put too much, they won't. Like they won't, because they're online. You can't go slap them. No, I'm kidding, Eric. I really wouldn't slap you or anybody else for that matter. And I was supposed to be a funny. So anyway, but I certainly enjoyed it. I enjoyed seeing you so much again, Will, and
You
just
too.
enjoyed
And also
your.
Kate says hello. And
Oh yeah, and tell her I say hello too. I just love you both. You're just good people through and through, and good artists. Those don't always come together. So it's a nice thing when it does.
completely
And
mutual on our end with you as well. So
well, it was a good fit. And I was just so lucky. So Amelia, I'm so glad you could come. I can't see you there, but I do know you were there. So thank you for coming to this talk. And it's Tea Talk with Jane. I do it every time, and I usually only have 5 or 6 people. But even when Larry Fink came, there were only like 25 people.
what? Oh, that's a
But
crime.
I know, but I actually go ahead and put it on the photography thing, because you never know. And there's always the recording, but you just never know. Like when I see one and I have time, I'll click on, because I want to see what people have to say,
Yeah.
So anyway, but so you never know, but it'll be out there on the YouTube channel, and then in my classrooms, all of them that go through. All
Good.
right.
Thank
All
you
right.
so much, Jane. Yeah.
Bye, Will. Take care.